These guys look like they've got pretty reasonable openers. 3 land each is a pretty good split.
Steve's already sitting on that misdirection.
That's exactly what I started
a pair
laughing
of them.
about. Not one, but
goodness.
2 misdirections. Pretty funny. Luis will get to see it, though, with the Thoughtseize.
I remember watching David Williams misdirect, I believe it was a Thoughtseize at Vintage Championships one year.
Huh. Yeah, Thoughtseize is target player. You can misdirect it. And it's not a you may, right? You have to take a card out of your own hand when it gets misdirected, I'm pretty sure. Assuming there's a legal target, of course.
Yeah, so his opponent Thoughtseized him. David misdirected it with a sack land up. The guy forced a will to misdirection. William sacked the sack land and pyroblasted it, and the guy only had 1 card left in his hand.
All right, well, here's the Thoughtseize. Do you misdirect this if you're Steve?
I don't think so. I mean, it's cute, but you have no idea what kind of terrible cards might be hanging out in his hand. Like, I would not be willing to lose a misdirection in any of those blue cards if he's just holding a Mox.
Sure.
Certainly something to think about.
He's thinking about it. It is on the stack. I mean, Steve is...
It is also Steve Menendian. I mean, thinking might be his favorite part of the game, so I can't blame him for considering here. I mean, we could see some epic Steve Menendian level, like, brainstorm pauses here.
Wow, he's going to do it.
Here we go. Yeah.
Might as well start it off. Mr. Misdirection. What did he remove?
Yeah. Ponder.
Ponder. And
or was it Preordain? Sorry, I think it was Preordain.
If you're Luis, you lose your Abrupt Decay here?
In this, you haven't seen his hand yet. I might just lose my own Preordain. I'm not sure. Yeah, he went with Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, I think Abrupt Decay is, I mean, sure, it can kill the creatures. But I mean, I think that Steve likes to play this as a control matchup. He's not the kind of guy who's just going to run out Young Pyromancer and try to go to town.
There are just a lot of draws with that deck, especially in Game 1 before you get to sideboard, where Young Pyromancer does come down early, and it's not like you have time to look for an Abrupt Decay. You need to have it in response to the first spell.
All right, well, Luis is shields down, so Misdirection and I believe it was a Ponder trades for Thoughtseize, Abrupt Decay. Preordain, not a Ponder. Funny. Yeah, neither player's hand does anything particularly aggressively.
No.
Merchant Scroll after you've cleared the misdirection? Is that what Luis is thinking?
Oh my goodness. It's
you just cleared
it's like watching a car accident. It's like I can't watch, but I can't look away.
All right. Well, he's got Brainstorm Fetch land set up first. Finds a Gush and a Yawgmoth's Will. That's not bad.
Wow, that's...
He needs a fast bond. That's what he needs.
Fair.
Do you put back... Do you keep a third land? I mean,
even though it makes no sense, I'm just rooting for him to put that Merchant Scroll back and sack it away or ponder it away or something.
All right, well, he put the fetch land on top temporarily, and now he's going to preordain and to redraw the fetch land. Got a little more information. And you can't play around the second misdirection, can you?
I don't see how. No.
I mean, the fact that Steve misdirected the first one actually, I mean, it's a bit of a waste of a misdirection.
I mean, it's still 2 for 2, and you get to see their hand.
Yeah, Steve gets to see Luis's hand. Luis does not get to see Steve's hand. So I think I do like Steve misdirecting.
Right, getting to see his hand while you still have a misdirection and a force is a big deal.
Oh my God! Here's another one. Does he do it again?
Well, I think you certainly do. I think if you do the first one, you almost automatically do the second one.
Yeah, he's already gone through a Brainstorm or Preordain. His hand's probably full of gas.
But beyond that, if you don't, whichever blue card he takes, the other one is stranded in your hand.
Yeah.
It just does nothing.
You're right. Easy misdirection for Steve. And Luis could Gush as a response, in theory?
Oh, no. I think that Gush is long gone. He knows both misdirections are out. The Ancestral should be clear.
So now that Merchant Scroll is a lot safer.
The Merchant Scroll is a lot safer.
Yeah, so Thoughtseize is resolving. Luis is forced to Thoughtseize himself for the second time in the game. I did not see this coming. This is pretty awesome. Like you
That's
predicted,
great.
Luis took his gush out of his own hand, and I gotta think he just runs out Merchant Scroll for Ancestral here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But when you have Yogg-Will in hand, I mean, the Gush being in the graveyard is a fine place for it. You're just doing whatever you can to dig for a fast bond right now.
And even if this Ancestral did get countered by some, fifth blue card out of Menendian, it's
right.
Clearing a path for Yawgmoth's Will.
Absolutely. I mean, because there haven't been any mental missteps flying around. Like, I don't think anyone's going to misdirect a Thoughtseize while they're holding mental misstep either. So it's not like he's expecting that.
Yeah. All right. Menendian's going to crack a fetch. What's he going to get? All he's got is Lightning Bolt, Ancient Grudge, right? Yeah, Ancestral resolves. Now Luis is sitting on Force of Will, blue card, Yawgmoth's Will, Mystical Tutor.
Yeah, so Mystical for Demonic? I don't know.
Oh, Mystical for Demonic to get the fast bond? That's not bad.
I don't know if I go that far. Does he have Treasure Cruise in his list or Dig?
I believe he's got Cruise. Let me double check.
Yeah, I'm looking now. He's 2 digs. You might just go get a dig here.
Yeah, he's Demonic tutored for dig in the last match.
Yeah, I think you just put dig on top. Dig's going to get you to the fast bond. You've got 6 extraneous cards in your yard that you don't need.
He did, in fact, go for dig through time. Luis in great shape here. I mean, it's kind of cute that Steve got to misdirect those 2 Thoughtseizes, but they're not the end of it wasn't the end of the world for Luis, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the second one wasn't really much of a choice. And sure. Steve's draw steps have just been poor for this matchup.
Yeah, he's accumulated a handful of red cards. His red cards do almost nothing here.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess his Pirate Blasts are good, but...
Not the greatest dig in the world if he went with Demonic Tutor Thoughts. I mean, I guess it's fine.
It's fine.
I guess he hasn't seen his opponent's hand yet, but the Thoughtseize just seems, again, extraneous.
It's easy for us to say. Wow, DT's for Lotus.
Yeah, because now he can sack Lotus for Black Yogg-Will, sack Lotus again, tutor for Fast Bond.
Yeah, he's basically set to go off next turn. He'll Thoughtseize first, and then just Yawgmoth's Will into all that value.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to see that hand, and it's just going to be a giant green light.
Indeed.
Like, okay, I can only lay 6 lands this turn. 1 for free, and hit myself 5 times.
Yeah, he even knows exactly what he needs to play around. It's a good point. He knows there's 6 points of burn over there.
Yeah.
All right, so does he have enough gas to play, what does he need, 9 spells and DT for the tendrils? Or is he going to need to use the DT to go get the fast bond and just hope he finds the tendrils?
He'll just tutor to get the fast bond, I think. I mean, I can't see his graveyard very well, but it's got to still be at least Ancestral Gush, and if the Merchant Scroll's in there to go get another Gush...
It is. Oh, I don't know what he removed with the dig.
Right, I don't know what he removed for the dig, but Menendian may get an additional turn, but if he does, it's not going to be one of consequence. He's seen the Yogg-Will in LSU's
hilariously,
hand.
The Ancient Grudge on the Mox Jet is actually doing Luis a favor.
Yeah.
The Jet is now another free storm count. I think it's
free
DT
mana.
tendrils. I'm not even sure he needs the fast bond. I mean, Jet, Thoughtseize, Yawgmoth's Will.
Well,
Jet
it changes a lot when your opponent goes bolt you, Ancient Grudge.
Yeah,
that just adds a lot to the storm. I agree. At this point, you don't bother going to get the fast bond.
I mean, he only needs 9 spells, right? Jet, Lotus, Jet again, Lotus again, Yawgmoth's Will. Here's Gush. That's 6 already. Yeah, he
drew another Gush. Well, I guess that one's not worth a ton without the fast bond.
DT.
I'm not sure it matters much either way at this point.
It's just a question of, can you safely get to the 9 storm counter? Do you have to just get a million miles ahead on card advantage, and he doesn't need Fast Bond. He's got all the mana and all the Storm Count he could possibly need for the Tendrils win. Tendrils is
Oh,
next.
he's already there. It's
Yeah, he
12
just
spells
DT'd.
already.
He demonic tutored for it out of the graveyard. All right, Luis Scott Vargas takes game number 1. Pretty interesting little game there, actually.
Yeah, they both had perfectly reasonable opening hands, and Steve's deck just didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, Luis's Thought Seizes, I think, have actually looked quite good. I think that card, it may just be good, especially maybe it's our metagame, but it has looked very good in these blue on blue matchups where, you know, people are force willing to defend things, and just leading with the Thoughtseize to start the fight that way seems super efficient.
Yeah, I haven't been real impressed with Thoughtseize in the general metagame, but it does seem very good in Vintage Super League.
I'll buy that.
I played Thoughtseize I played a straight up Oath instead of Oath on the board in the first trimester.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughtseize was very good against LSV, but the one draw step I didn't see was Yawgmoth's Will, and that was the end of that.
Fair enough. So now we get to do the sideboarding dance. I mean, we can throw these deck lists back up again if we've got a chance. Luis, I got to assume, is bringing in the Oath of Druids package. I mean, maybe this turns into a bit of a dance because Steve does have Grafdigger's Cage in his sideboard. He has 1 Nature's Claim in his sideboard. But Oath of Druids is so good against the Delver strategy that I think Luis just boards into it here, right?
I think he boards into it, and it's not that much of a dance because LSV's deck really relies on Yawgmoth's Will, which Grafdigger's Cage is incredible against also.
So he's already obliged to fight the Grafdigger's Cage?
Yeah, he already needs to keep it in mind. It's very hard to tendril somebody out without Yawg Willing, so unless he just wants to depend on tinkering out Colossus, which also gets shut down by Grafdigger's Cage,
yep.
You might as well fight that fight because it's going to come up one way or the other.
Sure. So you've got Luis bringing in a couple Nature's Claims then. Yeah, I'm happy to go down to the game if these guys are ready. If Luis is bringing in a couple Nature's Claims anyway, then yeah, I mean, Menendian only has 1 Nature's Claim of his own. His primary way of fighting Oath is Grafdigger's Cage, which Luis can fight back against. I mean, Abrupt Decay also blows up a Grafdigger's Cage in a way that's uncounterable.
Right. No, LSV has good answers.
Yeah. Uncounterable, but let us not forget Abrupt Decay can be misdirected.
Yeah. And yeah, he has 2 Abrupt Decays in the main, 1 on the board, 2 more Nature's Claims on the board. I think you definitely go Oath.
Delvers are still in Steve's list. He's been known to sideboard those out sometimes. I guess he likes them here. And Luis has a Tinker draw, which would certainly seem to imply that he's still got a Colossus.
Oh, there it is.
Through the Colossus? How that's awful.
Wow. Yeah, worst card in the deck. Just like it is every time there's a Colossus in your deck.
He does have Jace to put it back in, but it means he can't just bust out a turn 2 Tinker because he's got to get Colossus into his library. He got basically no other Tinker targets than the 1 Blightsteel Colossus. All right, Luis is going for Preordain here on turn 1, and I think Steve's going to blast it with a... Was that Pyro? No, he didn't do anything.
He just let it go.
Okay.
And that is one of the things LSV has taught me about Vintage.
Let the Preordain go?
The amount he's gone on and on about people, please stop just first turn mental misstepping, just the miscellaneous cards that only put 1 card back in their hand. It's not what Vintage is about. I was doing it quite a bit, and I'm on the other side of. I was on the other side of that camp, but I also automatically default to LSV just being right. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, and I'm mistaken.
All right, both players being a little cagey here. Steve not playing his Delver, which is kind of interesting. Mysticals for Ancestral and goes for Ancestral Recall. Luis has a mental misstep. So does Steve.
Yeah.
Luis could force a will here. I'm not sure.
he doesn't fight that fight a lot.
Right, exactly.
And
He's like, okay, I don't want to lose 2 good cards to let you draw 3 random ones. He's going to get destroyed, though. He does go for the Force of Will, and he's going to get Pyroblasted.
or Flusterstormed. I don't. It
Oh,
could
either
go
way. Yeah, Steve just has to decide which way he wants to counter Force of Will. Goes for the Pyroblast, it looks like. That's kind of a blowout. When
Yes.
you invest 2 cards into a Force of Will and your opponent counters it for 1 mana, that is hard to come back from.
Yes, it is. This game could very quickly just turn into a rout.
And Luis removed a Tinker from the game. That's a good card. I mean, less good if Colossus is in your hand, but still, you have the Jace to build up to.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the dig there. He still seems a couple turns off from the dig, and it seems Jace is far more reasonable than dig, and once Jace goes off once, the Tinker becomes very live again.
All right, Menendian goes for a Gush. No fast bond, so that is definitely moving him back from a mana development point of view. Though, of course, when you have no lands in your hand, it's sort of half free.
Yeah, it's half free. It is surprising to see a list with 4 Gush with no fast bond, but
Young Pyromancer and a Misdirection with this preordain.
Oh boy, even with it.
He pushed Young Pyro to the bottom, but put Misdirection on top.
He can't cast it, and given his experience with LSV and Misdirection, there's no way I could pass it up.
He could cast Young Pyro next turn.
I mean, he's already sitting on 7 cards to, 4 and a draw step coming. I would definitely take the Misdirection.
Sure.
I mean, just versus pushing them both, and I guess he did have the red for the Pyromancer. I was looking at his lands, not his mocks. Wow, Treasure Cruise is just going to push this completely out of reach. I mean, Steve doesn't even know that the Colossus is stranded in his hand. So
right.
This is.
Nature's Claim and a land are the cards with fear.
Well, Fast Bond becomes a lot less scary when your opponent goes Fast Bond, it hits the field, and they just say, okay, go.
True. Yeah, you just push Nature's Claim here?
Yeah, I think you just keep moving.
Yeah, he went bottom. He came up with a Gush for his trouble. And Delver's still just hanging out in Steve's hand. He just never taps his mana.
Well, in all honesty, right now he can't stop an Oath of Druids.
Right. If he resolves Trigon, he can. I mean, if you get Trigon down before Oath of Druids, then you're able to attack and blow up the Oath.
Right, and I believe that's what we'll see here. Trigon will hit play. Then he'll have a decision as to whether he wants to put down the Delver also. But I think you would just leave up Flusterstorm in case you actually think LSV's wily enough to put out an Oath, return both lands to Gush, play them both again, and put another Oath on the table or something.
I think Steve's going to go for a Treasure Cruise here instead of Trigon.
Already way ahead. Already ahead. Let's keep pushing it.
Yeah, it's 7 cards in hand too. I mean, he's actually has to start committing things to the board, or he's going to be forced to discard. He did not draw any lands there, so I guess that makes this. He can sort of Gush.
He's looking for a land.
Land and a Young Pyro on this pre-paint. Yeah, no. How he pushed
down.
Both lands? I would have kept land on top there. You actively want to draw land, I think.
Oh, I would have kept them both on top. I would have drawn the land there, played it, put a Trigon on the field, and wanted to draw a Young Pyromancer the next turn.
Yeah, if I heard my spotter correctly, he said it was push to the bottom, push to the bottom.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then he'd already played a land this turn? Oh, if he'd already played a land this turn, then okay, fair enough. Then the land's not nearly as interesting. Here is Oath of Druids off the top for Luis. Steve has very carefully avoided playing any creatures because he couldn't really deal with an Oath.
But this is why I really wish that Trigon would have come down last turn.
Trigon was in play, then you just get to attack and destroy Oath of Druids. He could have, yeah. If he doesn't Treasure Cruise, he could have played Trigon with Flusterstorm and Misdirection as backup. I mean, Misdirection can misdirect one of Luis's counterspells onto a different thing. But yeah, Oath resolves.
And now his outs start to include specifically the card Time Walk or getting one of those Nature's Claims back that he already pushed to the bottom.
Yeah, Young Pyro not nearly as exciting all of a sudden.
No. And we do know that LSV is not going to Oath into Blightsteel Colossus.
Yeah, he's, I'm sure, brought in at least one of the Grizzle brands. There's 2 in his sideboard.
How many cards does Menendian want to discard in this match?
He found a Grafdigger's Cage. Yeah, here's Grafdigger's Cage with mana floating to defend it. Now you just play creatures, right?
You have to. I think you have to get that Trigon out.
And he can play Trigon and leave 1 mana up, basically.
Yeah, he can leave his Flusterstorm up. So he's Misdirection Flusterstorm.
Leave the Volcanic up. There's a blue floating right now.
Yeah.
He's got 9 cards in his hand.
Maybe he'll just shock us both and he'll gush again.
He's not afraid to discard.
No, he's not. And I'm not by any means saying he's wrong. It's just a different line than I was considering.
Yeah, there's even misdirection targets for Abrupt Decay. I mean, the misdirection is pretty nice here as a way to defend Grafdigger's Cage because suddenly Abrupt Decay blows up both the Druids.
Right. Having the misdirection here is incredible. And it's going to continue to be incredible for all possibly 5 matches.
He's just discarding.
He's letting his mana burn and discarding.
Yep. Discards a Delver and a Young Pyro. Draws a second cage. There's no way for Luis to blow up 2 at the same time in his list, right?
Hercules. He has a Hercules in the main and a Hercules on the board.
Yeah, I mean, he can bounce both the cages. I doubt he has Hercules in his list right here.
Oh, I almost certainly would.
You would?
At least one. Because he's still playing...
bounce 2 cages?
And he's still playing Merchant Scroll, and his opponent has 3 cages in his list.
Interesting. Menendian Pyro's the gush there.
But it's also just very nice that one of your tutors can go get a cage answer. I mean, you really only need to Oath once. It's not like you need to answer it forever. You need to answer it for 1 upkeep.
Fair. It's Merchant Scroll that you want a target for? I mean, Mystical can obviously get Abrupt Decay, but...
Right.
Alright. Well, Luis is going to try to dig through time, having gotten his Gush Pyroed. Steve has the Flusterstorm.
Yeah, that dig is very countered.
Yeah. I mean, Luis had to start going for it. I don't think Steve was going to be discarding more cards. Yeah, this game...
Okay, now with the Force of Will.
Now it's time?
Well, we'll see what these 2 cards are.
I thought Gush was his blue card for Force of Will. It's now Flusterstorm.
I think the other Trigon is the Force of Will.
All right. All right. Menendian finally willing to commit a creature to the board. He's got a Misdirection and Force with a blue card and Flusterstorm. So he's willing to defend his Grafdigger's Cage. Yeah. Luis can't do anything about that Trigon.
Well, he'll just play
Chase and bounce it?
Yeah, it'll get Force of Willed.
Right. Yeah, Luis tapping out for this seems like an easy Force of Will. It's funny how Steve's hand isn't spectacular here. And he's down to just a Misdirection. Okay, now he's got Misdirection plus Flusterstorm, but still.
You can only discard spells for so long and still have a handful of spells.
Right. Trigon's going to come over and eat the oath. I mean, I think we're headed to game 3, but almost feels like if Luis can resolve the dig, can he find? I don't know. He's got to enter 2 cages, I guess. That's really hard to do.
It all comes down to whether there's a Hercules in his deck or not. Now, you can misdirect the Hercules, which...
Wow, he's going to blow up the Mox. He figures 2 cages with Misdirection and Flusterstorm is good enough. He wants to pinch the mana. I guess that keeps his Flusterstorm good. I don't know. Yeah, Steve. The fact that Steve discarded so many spells feels like he's...
While I think it's the right call, it's the call I never have the guts to make.
Blowing up the Mox?
Yeah. I'm always terrified of either the Oath or the Fast Bond. Like, I really, given my hand, don't want LSV to just draw Gush off the top.
Yeah. Well, here's Dig. That's got to get Flusterstormed, right?
I think so.
Man, Blightsteel just rotting in LSV's hand. We're in game 2 of match number 1. Menendian would like to send match 1 to a 3rd game. And he's looking quite likely to do that. He's got 2 Grafdigger's cages out, which are turning off Luis's Oath of Druids. Luis is stuck with a Blightsteel Colossus in his hand. Can't get back into his library. Plus, he's already removed his Tinker from the game anyway.
Yeah, and I think if you start down the path with the Jet, I think you have to go for the Soul Ring now.
Presumably. I guess you can actually misdirect Hercules too, can't you? His target player.
Yeah, all of LSV's answers for Grafdiggers can be misdirected. There's no rebuild in his deck.
Right. All right, here's Young Pyro. Should increase the clock. Should just be a couple turns now. It's kind of funny. I thought LSV had the advantage after sideboarding, because his Oath plan seemed to line up so well with Steve's Delvers. But Luis got the first game.
And this game ended up pretty lopsided after a few draw steps from an Indian, kind of the way it did for LSV in the last game.
It's true.
Again, both opening hands looked competitive, but LSV, of course, started with Blightsteel, and an Indian, not so much.
Yeah, Blightsteel was his first draw phase. All right, Trigon keeps doing work. Now down goes Oath of Druids. Luis falls to 9.
Oh, boy.
Does this Gush do anything?
Maybe I've watched more LSV Vintage than some people. But the things I've seen him do to people in this situation where he's just operating off of nothing but a Fast Bond and draws Gush off the top.
Well, now he doesn't even have the Fast Bond. I don't know why. What does he draw at this point?
Yogg-Will never hurts.
Yeah, all right. Luis has seen enough. That mental misstep isn't helping him. We're going to go to game 3. Luis will be on the play for this game 3. Yeah, so I mean, the story in that match, that game anyway, it felt like Luis's draws were kind of mediocre, but I mean, Steve was the one who managed to resolve an early Ancestral, right?
Yeah, pretty early. But just the way his hand fell apart on the fight for that Ancestral.
Right, that's what it was. Luis went for the Force of Will, and Menendian had the Pyro Blast as the third counter. That was really the turning point in that game. I mean, it lasted a while afterwards, but really that was the point where it turned. Steve still didn't want to commit creatures to the board. He discarded for a little while, but he set up that ancestral turn really nicely, actually. And now we go to game 3.
Well, that's going back.
Luis can turn 1 Tinker if he wants to.
If he dares.
He's kind of all in. If
no lands and no Force of Will.
Yeah, that's probably not the right play. It would work, though. No, it wouldn't work. There's a Force of Will over there.
Well, that hand's not getting kept either.
Oh, you don't keep Luis's hand? I don't know if I take
No, I mean Menendian's hand.
Menendian needs to mulligan. Totally agree. And he is. But that means
and then once my opponent mulligans, maybe I keep.
Yeah, now
I have a really hard time keeping that in the dark.
Luis kept it in the dark. Yeah, the fact that you can DT is actually nice. It means you had to sack the Lotus for black, so you're not going to Oath or Tinker off of it. Okay, get a land. I'll buy that. Now, do you Oath or Tinker? Wow, he just goes for turn 1 Tinker.
Oh,
what do you got?
I think we saw in the last game Menendian discard a Delver with a blue in his pool. So, yeah, just playing an Oath with no backup here is not... At that point, you have to DT for the Forbidden Orchard, not the Tropical.
Yeah, Luis threw it, turned his Demonic Tutor into a Tropical in case Steve did have the Force of Will. He'd at least have the Tropical to operate off of once he top decks another land. But yeah, he just went for it. He's like, my draw says I can cast Tinker on the first turn. What can you do about it, Steve? And Steve had Grafdigger's Cage in his hand for turn 1, but that was too late. Luis Scott Vargas, kablam! Puts the first match on board. W for Luis and L for Steve Menendian. A turn 1 Tinker off Black Lotus and Mana Crypt.
Yeah, a turn 1 landless keep.
Landless keep. Hey, he's 5 mana on the first turn. That's plenty. 5 mana, he can throw in a Demonic Tutor to go get a Tropical Island. Who needs land in your opener? Just DT for a land, run out the Tinker, cross your fingers. You just do the Force of Will check. I think people don't do the Force of Will check often enough.
I mean, in general, I think he's right, but I think there's a lot of people who, if your first turn is Lotus, sack it, Tutor, that they're going to Force of Will if they have it.
It's super scary. Oh, of course he's going to Force of Will if he has it. But I mean, you're basically Luis's play saying you mulligan to 6. Your odds of having a Force of Will are under 50%. I mean, at 6 cards, they're down around like 40, I think. He's got to have a Force of Will and a blue card in a 6-card keeper that obviously must have some land too. And you just run it. And it's not like his game is completely over against Force of Will. He's in bad shape against Force of Will because he's invested the Black Lotus and the Mana Crypt and the Tinker. But he's got a Tropical. Yeah. He's got an Oath in his hand. Like he can top.
No, he doesn't have a Tropical if the Tutor gets Force of Willed.
Oh, you think he just has DT the Tutor? Oh, you would DT the Demonic Tutor there?
Yeah, I would. If my opponent just went Lotus Demonic Tutor, I would just Force of Will it.
I wouldn't. I don't think. I see your point. With that hand, it would have worked out.
What could you be waiting for if your opponent has a black floating yet play a land?
I mean, I guess he hasn't seen the Mana Crypt yet. Whatever. I mean, Luis is effectively all in. Your point is just being he's more all in than I'm giving him credit for.
I think it's still a keep, and that's fine.
Luis kept. He went for it, and he is now up a match. So the format again. Go ahead.
I might actually be less likely to Force of Will the Demonic Tutor if my opponent goes Lotus Crypt, sack the Lotus, tap the Crypt, like Tutor with 2 black and a colorless floating.
Okay.
Because then I'm just sitting there going, wow, what's coming? And then if he goes to get the land and Tinkers, well, then I guess you just get your Tinker Force of Will. I guess all you do is you end up with a land in play. I don't know. Again, I have to default to my point of view of I'm pretty sure LSV's right here.
Yeah, that hand would have probably lost to a Force of Will. Not definitely lost. Probably lost to a Force of Will. Didn't have it. So we're on to match 2 with Luis up a game. It is best 3 out of 5 matches. So Luis is 1/3 of the way toward being our inaugural Vintage Super League champion. We might have as many as 4 matches left to go, though. Bob, thanks for hanging out with us for match 1. I think we're going to take a real quick break. We're going to cycle you out and bring Chris Pakula in to watch the second match. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we will see you guys on the other side. Stay tuned.